As more and more of our lives shift online, it's becoming more likely our data will end up in the wrong hands. As many as 90,000 people may have had their data stolen in the latest Canadian breach involving Simplii Financial and the Bank of Montreal. But are there breaches happening that we don't know about? And where does your information go once it's gone? Joining me now in Ottawa is cybersecurity expert David Masson. David, thank you for being here.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well. It seems on our side of this, we report more and more often on data breaches, but how often are they actually happening?
Data breaches are quite common. Worldwide, they're very common. And here in Canada, it's no different to the rest of the world. Data breaches take place all the time.
You know, we've got something called the Digital Privacy Act. How is that going to change things?
Okay, the Digital Privacy Act is going to make organisations within Canada now actually disclose when they've had a breach. Right now, there's no legislation that makes them do that. And so one of the reasons it's difficult to know what the scale of threat is in Canada is because nobody really has to. But that'll be the case come November when the Act comes into play. So organisations, if they're breached, they'll have to tell the individual who's been affected, and they'll also have to inform the Office of the Privacy Commissioner about what has happened.
You know, when people think data breaches, they think obviously the financial sector and they think Facebook. But are there other targets out there? Are there other sectors that would be most likely to be targeted by hackers?
Okay, financial sector is more likely to be targeted than any other because it's finance. There's money there to be had. But all other sectors are just as vulnerable as any other ones. For instance, over the last year, we've seen an increase in attacks against, for example, healthcare, education, and the public sector as well.
You know, we often hear that line that's uttered in movies that you never negotiate with terrorists. And I wonder, when these hackers demand a ransom, how often is that demanded? What are the policies of these institutions? Do they pay the ransoms?
Okay, policies will be different for different institutions worldwide and here in Canada. The police will tell you don't pay the ransom. Really, it's going to be up to the institution or the individuals to decide themselves. We don't really have statistics on who pays and when because pretty much people don't talk about it.
So we don't know that if somebody, because the logic behind it would be if you pay, you then embolden the other hackers out there to follow suit.
Yes, I can think of an instance where a company paid the ransom, and within a month, the ransomware guys came back again, put it on because they knew they would pay because they paid the last time. So.
David, what happens when that data is stolen?
Okay, data like the data that seems to have been stolen from BMO and Simplii, the bad guys use it to effectively impersonate other individuals, and they'll apply for fraudulent loans, credit cards, mortgages, open up bank accounts, money launder it, apply for fake grants. There's nothing worse than the bank ringing you up and telling you you've defaulted on your second, third, and fourth mortgage, and your question is, well, what second, third, or fourth mortgage? I didn't apply for that. That's what they use the data for.
So, and who would be liable for something like that? If my data is in the hands of a financial institution, that financial institution gets hacked, and then I suffer the consequences, would I be on the hook for all of those financial misappropriations?
No, your financial institution will reimburse you, and both BMO and Simplii have actually said that's exactly what they'll do.
Well, I guess reassuring the customers is sort of the number one priority right now. Lastly, sir, I've got to ask, when one of these hacks happens, surely these companies and institutions suffer reputational damage. But is it understood that the hacker is simply one step ahead of robust security already, or is it a sign that all of these institutions need to up their security game?
Okay, right now the advantage is definitely in the hands of the attacker and has been for some time. And all institutions, the banks in particular, and the big six here in Canada, are working really hard to try and get ahead of that game. But it's quite difficult right now. The scale of the threat that we face is so big in terms of quantity. It's so complex and just becoming more sophisticated. And in terms of speed, particularly for those who are using advanced tools, it's now so fast that basically human beings can't keep up. So right now the advantage is with the hand of the attacker.
David Masson in Ottawa, thank you very much for your insights this morning.